Hello, everybody, whoever's watching now or in the future, most likely in the future. Hello there. Yep. So let's wait maybe 8 more minutes. Whoever's watching now can take a look at the future curriculum. I have to reorder some things here, but I don't know. I guess I'll take it out of the stream. It's not that interesting while we're waiting. Hello there. Yeah, let's see a question, Colin. So Colin asks, what was the moment when you had the first epiphany when you realized you've got it? You've you've got it, and you're like an expert in Unity, or at least you come to a point where you can know you can do almost anything. Uh, I don't know. I have to think about it. I don't know. Yeah, there wasn't any. Yeah, there wasn't a moment like that. Um, yeah, I'm a weird combination of an extreme optimist and then sometimes an extreme pessimist. So it fluctuates a lot. And like I always had this feeling that I can just do anything, and you can't know how to do anything, but you know how to Google, and there's Stack Overflow, and like you can do like anything basically. It's only a function of how bad you want it, right? And I just knew that if I want something bad enough, I can just do it. Uh, but to give you like an acceptable answer, to basically the moment where I realized that I've got the handle on Unity. Um, Maybe so like after a year or so, but it really depends on how many hours you put daily and so on and so forth. Um, yeah, and for me it was like maybe 2 hours per day maximum, and not every day. And I was trying various small games. I was just playing around and exploring Unity, and at the moment when I started, or right around that time, I Unity released this their new UI, which is called UI, um, and it's still used today. It's like it's the most capable component in Unity, or at least like in terms of user interfaces, right? On the buttons and everything that you see on the screen. And I kind of got to be an expert in that because it was released at the right time when I had a few years of Unity, maybe 2 years of Unity or something like that. Um, and yeah, I kind of got I followed their docs, some tutorials, and I kind of understood how it works. And yeah, like I can say that I was like uh, a beginner expert in Unity interfaces, and that's kind of my, I might say, specialization in Unity, like building interfaces, and that's why I've also created a plugin for that. Yeah, 1 second. Hello, Sandworm. And yeah, that was the moment. So yeah, there's no like you know exact answer to that question. um I guess on average, if you work like uh 3 days, or let's say 4 days per week for 2 hours per day, maybe in a year, yeah, you can come to a point where you say like I can create anything. But to create just a specialized thing, just one thing, like it can be a month, 2 months, depending on, I guess, like maybe it's 40 hours of learning and practicing. Yeah, well, since it's 1843, let's wait until round time comes. So 1845, 2 more minutes. Yeah, and I was saying like there will be a test on week 3, but that doesn't make sense. It has to be on week 4. I was just looking at the curriculum here. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have lots of material, in week 2, and especially day 3 of week 2. So yeah, like day 3 of week 2 will be really stuffy. You'll have to just maybe drink a green tea or something to survive. I think it will take at least 3 hours. Um, it's kind of my specialty. We'll do. Uh, we'll start from the fundamentals of programming, then programming applied to Unity, and then best practices for Unity and how to structure your project and all of that. Yeah. So there. Um, yeah, and it will be like a hardcore day. It's like learning programming in 3 hours. And I mean, I have to confess, this is not only for you, but for future people that will look at this course. So that's why I will add lots of things there. So you don't have you if you remember at least 30% of it, that's great. Um, yeah. So week 2, day 3, I think. No problem, Alex. You can see the recordings. Yeah. And yeah, and there are a lot of other things in week 2. So yeah, 1846 Eastern European time. We can start. We can start. Let me put these things here. We have 2 viewers on YouTube as well. All right. Good. Welcome to still week 1, day 4. It's almost a week. And yeah, we'll be talking about prefabs, lights, and cameras and materials more in depth. So a prefab is a game object turned into a file that is reusable, so that you can copy it to other places, like or let's say you have a chair, and of course in a room you probably have more than one chair. You have wait, I think the stream doesn't show. 1 second. I think OBS doesn't show the stream for some reason. Does it show this? No. 1 second, I'll have to see what's happening. Display capture. Display capture. Oh, that's weird. 1 second, 1 second. So I think, yeah, Meets is showing it correctly, but OBS doesn't show it correctly. One moment. Go screen capture. Oh, okay. So for some reason, OBS didn't want to work. Okay. Now it should be visible. I don't know why that happened. Okay. That's only for the YouTube stream. Basically, it was showing my desktop only. Yeah, but you were hearing me. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, a prefab, like I said, it's a prefab. It's a thing that represents a game object that you want to reuse and use in different places, and which you can turn into a file. And you basically create, like, remember we've created a cube and other things, and basically they were living inside our scene, that file that has the extension .unity, right? And I will show you again here. So this to be deleted is this file here, basically. And it's a file with the extension .unity, and that represents a scene. And the scene, the visual approximation of it is shown here in the hierarchy window. And basically, it's a file that describes what objects are there. So, for example, this cube, or let's take the sphere and let's call it ball. So we have a ball, and we've added a rigid body, a material, right? And if we want to reuse this ball in another scene, of course we can. You can drag the scene here, and yeah, we're doing multi-scene editing. Just don't think about it too much. Just know that it's possible, but we won't be doing it here. And you can just Control C, Control V, or yeah, you should do it like this, right? But that's more of a new thing. Like yeah, you can do that as well. But to do it the standardized way, you turn it into a prefab. So you just drag it here, bam, and now it's a file, an actual file that lives outside the scene, outside this thing, right? And it's just a file describing what that object has. And I mean, if you're really curious, you open it as a text file and you see it's very logical, everything here. Like, I mean, you don't need to understand everything, but it's like it says, okay, it's a game object. It's called ball. It has a transform component. It has a mesh filter. It has a mesh renderer. It has a sphere collider. It has a rigid body with these properties. And it kind of makes sense, right? It's a file that describes the ball object perfectly. And now the scene itself, if we save it, but we won't be also browsing it with the text file, it won't contain now like everything about the ball. It will only contain just the file name where the ball is. And yeah, you can also think of like saving space on this space, but it's not about that. It's about just having it here. And see, it's a file, and I can modify the file. And if I have this ball in multiple scenes, for example, this ball is part of the second scene, and I'm just opening the multi-scene so you can see changes that I'm doing to the ball. So because it's a prefab, all of its instances, basically when you drag now a prefab onto a scene, it will become an instance of that prefab. And let's say I want to modify something about this ball, so I can, I don't know, does it work with scale? Yeah, it also works with scale. So you see, like, if you modify the prefab, all of its instances are modified, and that's basically how all of the game engines, all of the games work like. So if you have like 100 chairs in a room, you basically can modify them all at once, right? Because if you modify a chair, you want all of them to be modified, right? But let's say I want to modify one chair only, and I'm doing it like this. So I want to have it like for it to have like 5 meters tall to be. And you see there's now a blue line here, which means this object, this object, which is a prefab instance, has an override, right? And that means that if I modify it again here, I think it won't get, okay, yeah, it will get, but not in this direction. Yeah. So the Y component is already overridden by the ball in this scene. I mean, to keep it simple, let's just remove the scene, save it, and save this one as well. So we're inside this scene, right? And because we have an override there, and we try to modify the prefab as well, we make it like 3 meters, right? It doesn't change the ones that have an override here, right? But it can change its X, for example, because that one is not overridden, right? And in this scene, it changed both of them. And you see there's no blue line here that represents an override. It basically follows whatever the prefab does. See? And about position, I think position doesn't work because it's a bit special. Like, position is never dictated by the prefab. Position is always an override, you can say. It's like it has an override by default, even if it's the same value there as the prefab, because the position is the most fundamental property of an object, right? Where is it placed in space? And that's like a good thing to have, because you don't want your objects to suddenly jump to some weird places, right? I think rotation as well, you can rotate it, and it will also rotate. No. Yeah, I think rotation also doesn't apply. Yeah. Good. Yeah, you can see them. They're also bolded, right? You see they are the name and the value of the property. So that's how prefabs work. But of course, there's a lot more to it. And as I said, yeah, a prefab is a file basically that represents a object, a game object, a template. Yeah, a template is a good analog. And the prefab instance is a game object created by dragging a prefab file into a scene. Not that, we went too much in the past. Yeah, and of course you can create prefabs from code, basically. you have like a a script, and you write some things there, and you can drag the prefab onto the script's input fields. And inside the script, you basically have some functions for instantiating the prefab as a prefab instance in the current scene, whatever current scene is. And that's how you create bullets. For example, you create a, like if you want a visual representation for a bullet, for example, in our 3D shooter, where you had that cinematic effect where you shoot a bullet and you literally see the bullet and the camera follows the bullet, and that's how you create them, right? You have a prefab and you use some code to instantiate that object. Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, a prefab is just a template. It stores everything about a game object, but it doesn't store its dependencies. For example, in this case, this prefab has this default material which is built in Unity, so you don't really have to care about it. You press it and you see there's nothing that highlights here. So that prefab is like inside Unity, it's not a file. Um, but of course you can create a material and you'll have it here, and then it will be an actual file, and this prefab will depend on it. But we depend on this like physics material which we've created to make it bounciness 1, see? And by default I think it's 0 or something. And inside this prefab, you don't have this material also. So this prefab depends on this thing, right? This physics material. So you kind of have to be organized and like not put it like this, but have a folder, right? Create a folder, and you call it like uh, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Like if you're creating a game with multiple levels, you'll have the name of the folder would be the level's name, and if the ball is only there in that level, you'd have a folder that's called ball. And you have the prefab ball, you have the physics material ball, you'll have the visual material ball from the mesh renderer here, right? And when you do, I think, export, if you want like to export only the ball, you see by default, it also selects all of its dependencies, include dependencies. Yeah, it's by default. And I mean, let's say you want to send it to someone, or I don't know, yeah, or maybe you're creating assets and you're selling them somehow, or right, and you have it here as a Unity package, right? And you can import it, and it says like nothing to import. All assets from this package are already in your project. And the way it knows them is each time you create a file, and this is really key. Like it's a thing that doesn't sound that important, but it's really good to understand that how does Unity identify everything. And the way it does it, it creates this GUID, which stands for something universal ID, right? Uh, so this thing uniquely identifies this file, ball.physics material. And these meta files are created for everything, even folders. So Unity even creates for every folder that you have, they create like folder name dot meta, right? And that has some metadata here. And based on this GUID, like every other component only has to know like, okay, ball, I have this material here, and that material here has a GUID, and this physics material has a GUID, and we're seeing it very nicely, like we press on it, it highlights it, but inside the prefab itself, like you will find the reference to that to this asset, right? Um, let's go quickly. And it's this thing. I know not everyone might be interested in this, but I really like to know how things work under the hood. It kind of helps me understand things better. So you see the sphere collider on the material field has this file ID and GUID, and that's all it has. And it expects this file to be present in the project, right? And Unity has some utilities so that if you know the GUID of an asset, you can get it from here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, in many games like characters, objects, and like I said, like chairs, have the same properties, materials, and even logic. Like you might have um, a ball that when it collides with anything creates a sound, right? You want to hear a sound when a ball hits something, and then that means you have to put a simple script on it, and you'll have like on collision enter or what. Yeah, on collision enter. There's a method that's called for you, and you just have to know what sounds to play, and it plays a sound, and then you can create 100 balls, right? You can just from code you can instantiate 100 balls, or you can just drag them. It depends on how your scene is set up. And then when they fall, they will each create a sound, right? And when you want to change the sound, you only change the sound from the prefab, right? And that can be applied to everything, lights, whatever. And maybe you want like the base light, like a light bulb. I mean, um, the base light bulb is the same, but you have its color as an override, right? So you can still modify the shape of the bulb from the prefab, and every bulb will be modified, but the color will stay the same, right? If you want to have like blue, red, white, Let's see. So Alina asks, so a prefab is an object that can be instantiated from code as well, like the enemies from Mario or the bullets, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you either drag them if they are like already there, or like you drag them at edit time. So edit time is the moment before you press play, or like basically when you are in the Unity editor. And at playtime, or that also coincides with when you run the game, maybe on your device, right? Mobile or everywhere. Um, you can use code. Yeah, you can instantiate it like when the player presses, maybe in a shooter, when they press left click, at that moment you instantiate the bullet if you want a visual representation for the bullet, because in most games you don't even have a bullet, right? You only have some code logic that just checks where you're aimed at, and if there's an enemy and it's an instant, right? So it's basically every time you shoot, it's instantly. um yeah. So yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah, and enemies from Mario, yeah, they also spawn the moment you enter a certain area. They spawn from the left or the right of the screen. Um, let's see. Yeah, this repetition gives the players a sense of consistency and aids learning game mechanics. Also, like this is more of an observation, right? It's not a fundamental thing. Um, Of course, like if you have coins that you have to collect, you'd like all of the coins to be the same, right? You don't want one to be bigger than the other, but without any obvious reason for why that is, right? So we want all your coins to be the same and everything, and only on top of that you can color them if you want, like once uh, some of them to give you more points than others and so on. But you start from a base thing. Yeah, so imagine you have like GTA. You create GTA, right? There are so many objects there, and I mean, at least let's say like GTA Vice City, which is like in my childhood's game. Um, there are a lot of cars, a lot of trees, a lot of green lights, and people even that are the same. They're like exactly the same, right? And um, of course, you have to have prefabs there. You define some prefabs, and like 90% at least of every instance in the game is the same, and maybe there's some like randomness there, right? Because on top of all of that structure, you want to have some randomness, right? Maybe some of them walk slower or something like that. Yeah, basically what we went through already. And there's also this thing here which was like since a few years ago was added, and basically you can edit the prefab in isolation. I mean, you can do it here as well, but here you're not seeing its children. So for example, if you add cylinder and then you add a cube inside the cylinder, I mean, let's do it like this. You're not seeing it here, right? You're just seeing the high level view and whatever. But if you want like to go really into it, and imagine this is like a menu, and it's like a base menu, a panel with maybe a list of items, right? Like a list of like a leaderboard or something, and you have a lot of lists in your game, and you just create a prefab for it, right? And you only change the items in the list, right? And you have this here a lot of things, maybe animations, maybe particle systems. When you click an item, some fireworks start happening, and all of that. And yeah, you can do it here, and yeah, you see it happens here. And you can also double click this, I think. Yeah, and you enter the prefab editing mode. Yeah, and there are two modes, like you can edit actual 3D objects, or you can edit UI objects. Let's do an image, or let's do directly a button. That's the most okay, and we turn it into, well, actually I don't think, yeah, we turn it into a prefab, and now our canvas is a prefab in itself. And yeah, you can just edit the UI here. So this is a canvas, and it has a button. And yeah, this can be anything. This can be like a chat that's overlaid on your screen, right? And you can just show it to the player, right? Let's go back. And yeah, we talked about like prefab being a file. This is a game object. Actually, the prefab, it's a game object, but it's a prefab instance that was turned into a game object. And these are the prefabs properties. Just they're just the same. This is the inspector that we already talked about. Yeah, simply drag a game object from the scene to the project folder, and that is you create a prefab. Yeah, so there are two ways to change a prefab. A prefab in prefab mode or prefab overrides. Yeah, directly changing the file, like I said, and I've already shown you this, changes all the instances in all of the scenes. It's actually, if you take it like exactly, like technically, scenes aren't changing because they don't contain the properties for this object. They only contain like the address, that GUID of the prefab, right? Like the moment you turn an object from a scene into a prefab, that scene doesn't contain all of these properties anymore. It only contains an address. Like it's exactly like your home address, right? Instead of describing what your house is made of and how many doors it has and everything, uh, you just say, this is my address. And you just basically describe all of your entire house with just your address, right? Because anyone who wants to find anything will just go to that address. That's how this thing works. So basically, when you change something here, um, it technically only changes it inside this file, right? But at the moment you open the scene, like in an instant, Unity just goes and searches for all of the addresses, and it's very complex. Like there's like a lot of dependencies and all of that, and it just compiles them beautifully, and you see them here magically, and you see the object here. And but from user's perspective, it's safe to say like when you change the prefab, it changes in all of the scenes because that's the result you're seeing, right? Um, yeah. And then to enter prefab mode, you double click the prefab asset in the project window. Yeah, like there's some example here with two instances of the prefab, and when you modify the prefab, instances of it are modified. So prefab overrides allow changes to individual prefab instances and not the prefab itself. So this like has two um like two purposes, right? So one is to like, let's say I added this ball here, and I mean I've already did this. Like I've overridden the Y scale, so the vertical axis. So now every change in the same property, so the scale on the Y-axis in the base prefab, won't affect this object anymore. But there's also this thing like, let's say like I want to enforce, so this is like, wait, oh yeah, because I've created I've modified the prefab. Let's actually remove these things, or just let's disable them. Yeah, I mean, and you can disable them with just select them and press here. But I have this shortcut, right? Like, or it's already there. It's Alt Shift and A, or Option Shift and A. Yeah. So the ball, and what I want to say is, we have the ball here, but I don't want to change anything. Like I want to have it like it is by default, like the prefab is by default. But I want to like lock or fix the scale, right? And I think I can do like change it a little and then change it again or something like this. And you see it stayed this way, it stayed bolded. So change it to something and change it again. Yeah, and I think now like if I go here and I try to modify something, yeah, it doesn't change. So that's like a way of locking the properties as they are. You know, like there's no like a lock button or something. You just do it, and it kind of makes sense. Like I think I even prefer it this way. So because it's reusing first principles in a way. Like every property that's modified, it's an override, and then nobody can change it externally. And yeah, it works this way. And you like basically didn't change it compared to the base prefab, but you have locked the values. Okay, yeah, they're bolded. Yeah, and I guess I don't know if this is obvious already or not, but you have like a lot of these things, and you just once you drag them, they are independent instances. Like you can scale them uh, individually, right? You can't affect yeah, I think I am not mentioning that there, or at least not in the next slide. Like let's say I want to force every other asset, or not asset, every other instance that doesn't have overrides, of course, to adopt this new, like I want it like 7 meters, right? And I want to apply these changes to the prefab itself, so in the opposite direction. So that I want this file, basically, this prefab, which is represented by a file, to have instead of 185 to have 7 meters, to be 7 meters tall. I just can right click and apply to prefab ball, right? And see it here. And I mean, if there was a ball here that didn't have any overrides, let's just do that. Like I drag a ball here, right? Oops. And like this doesn't have any overrides, so it means that it adapts to any changes that the base prefab does. And when you press apply, then you basically don't have any overrides anymore, right? Because you're like going back to an initial state where you're the same as your parent prefab, right? Let's like change z to 4 or to 0.1. So it's like this, almost plain, right? And if we apply this to the prefab, naturally all of the instances of that prefab will be changed, right? This and this one, right? See, because they didn't have an override on the z property, only on the y property. This one and this one had on x and y, and I think z. Yeah. So that's how it works, basically. Next, prefab variants. Yeah, a prefab variant, it's like going one step deeper into prefabs, and this thing saved us a lot of time when it first appeared a few years ago. It's like a very useful thing, and we struggled a lot before it, so you will have a very easy time now. So let's say dragging a prefab instance from the scene view into the project view, or right clicking a prefab file. Okay. Yeah. So this is like a prefab of a prefab, and it's a very powerful concept. let's delete these things. So we have our ball here. We can press reset and it will be reset. Oh, actually not reset, but you can go here to modified component and revert, which means it will revert to whatever the base prefab is. But we can also go here and press like reset, and reset just means every value goes to its default. So integers go to 0, strings or text goes to empty, and so on. We press Control Save or Command Save, and we have this ball as well here. Good. So this is a ball, and it's a prefab. But let's say like we want to have like all balls all around. I mean, not all balls, but yeah, I can think of the shape as well. But no, let's say we only want in our game we only want balls that are round, but we want them to have different materials, right? And we can create like this will be suddenly it will become ball base. This is just a convention, and I mean you can also use uppercase, which is called like Pascal case, I think it's called, when you write it like this. So this is a ball base, and it's just a convention, so you can use any name, doesn't matter, but it's easier to recognize. So you have ball base, right? And now you can either right click and create prefab variant, right? And you can call it like ball blue, right? And you can see there is a difference here. You can see a side of this icon is hashed, like it has some parallel lines in it, and that kind of symbolizes that it's a prefab, but it has a tweak, right? And it's just an icon, right? And it means that this thing now is a, where are you? Here. This thing is a prefab variant, and what that means is basically it's a variation of this prefab. And currently it has there are no changes in it, but let's say like in order to edit it, and yeah, I mean you can edit it here directly, right? But that will edit the instance of that variant. But in order to edit the variant itself, just double click it, or no, go it like this with this thing here, or double click it here if you want, right? Or press this, and now you're editing the file, the actual file, right? This thing. And let's choose some, I don't know, thing here. I don't know, it's something, a player, doesn't matter. But now you have a blue ball. Yeah, and you can now create another variation. I think you can do it like this again. And it asks you, yeah, I know what to select here, but I wanted to remind myself what this would do. Would you like to create a new original prefab or a variant from the existing prefab? So if you press original prefab, like this thing, you'll create a completely different prefab that doesn't have any link to the previous prefab. So it's exactly as if you've like you can do something like this. So you can do, well, you can do Control C, Control V. You can do this prefab unpack completely, and this just removes any link to anything. So it's just like a separate game object, doesn't have anything to do with any. And like when you select this original prefab, it's as if you have duplicated it, prefab unpack completely, or unpack, I don't remember. Like you're basically turning it into not a prefab, right? Into just a regular game object, and then you drag it here. That's what it will happen. So that you just remove a link to the prefab. Okay. And let's just do a prefab variant. And this is the same as just right click on this one, on the original prefab, and go create prefab variant, right? And we can just drag this thing here. And you see it also turned into a prefab variant here. So it doesn't, like its immediate ancestor, it's not the ball base anymore. Like this game object's parent prefab, it's not this thing anymore, but it's this thing, yeah. And I mean, one disadvantage for this thing is that you have to, when you name it, it doesn't get the same name here as well, right? I don't think you can reset or something. So yeah, I usually just right click and create a prefab, and then a prefab variant, and then just drag it here. So I'm just I have to, sorry, name it again, red. So ball red, and let's edit the prefab variant. Let's see, can we have a red here? I don't know if we have a red. Well, I don't know. We'll have to just duplicate this thing. Let's just copy it temporarily. By the way, I used Option or Alt on Windows, and you can just and we'll go into materials as well. Don't worry. This is like the standard material. This is the default one. There are lots of materials, transparent and all. And let's no. Voila, we have a red ball now. So we have the same ball, which just has the base, right? And we have two variations of that ball, blue and red, right? And these are variants. And you can edit a variant exactly like a prefab. It's just a prefab of a prefab, which means that you can press again on this arrow and now edit the prefab itself. If you press here, you see it highlights here. So now you're actually editing this thing, which and you can come here also by just double clicking it, like you already know, right? You can edit the variants on this, and you can have any number of, you can have any depth of inheritance, right? So you can have a variant of a variant of a variant and so on. And this gives you a lot of power, and especially in user interfaces, it gives you like enormous power. Like previously you had to create custom scripts and all of that to have this kind of functionality, because you only had prefabs, you didn't have variants. So what this allows us to do is we can basically, through the base prefab, we can control the base properties. You see, like I turned it into an oval thing. But let's say, I mean, I want to create this this red ball multiple times because I have a lot of like playground or something, right? And the blue ball as well. I have two of them, right? And let's say that I want the red balls, and I double click it here, or actually let me just put it here. edit it exactly directly from here. Let's say that I want the red ball to have, I don't know, I just want the red ball. Yeah, let's do it like this. I want it to have a small object somewhere. I want it to have like a sphere that's 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. So it's like a small sphere. Yeah, well, actually, because the ball itself has a scale of 2, a sphere that's perfectly, um, that's perfectly round, it will actually be elongated, right? Because the parent is also elongated. And yeah, you have to somehow like compensate for that, right? If you want it complete round, right? And or yeah, that's good. Yeah, and that's our red ball. And now all of our red balls have that thing there. And this is literally everything you need to know about prefabs, right? Because these are the the fundamental principles, and then you just take them and create the whole game with them, right? You especially useful when you have repetitive objects in your scenes, right, in your game. And this also applies to even non-visual assets, non-visual objects, like you said, you remember I said like an ad manager or uh, a wave manager, for example. Like you have a tower defense game and you have a game object that represents the logic of your waves, but all of them have kind of a structure, right? They have like the number of units or the sub waves, or how many groups are there in a unit, how far in time they are from each other, and so on and so forth, right? And but they have a very concrete structure, right? And you can have there's a better way to do it than with prefabs, but that's a good example to understand further how this works. Yeah, and that's why we have variants, right? A variant is a prefab of a prefab, and you can have any number of levels. Um, Good. So again, to the base prefab, you change like the base properties or whatever you want to take as the base properties, right? You can change the base properties. And through the variants, you change only the properties for that variant, right? Uh, and that's why like we want the blue balls to have like a small ball on top of them, and yeah, the blue balls to not have anything. And yeah, that's variants, and that's a very powerful concept. Yeah, it's the same thing that we've talked about. So this is like a target in a game, and it has a game object added to it, which is shown as this plus. And I think I didn't go over this, but basically you see there's a plus here, right? This plus signifies the fact that you've added. This is like the action of adding a game object is an override, right? In a way, on the base prefab, which is this one, and we have overridden its structure by adding another sphere. And of course, prefabs can have other prefabs inside them. So I don't know. Let's create just a quick prefab. Uh, yeah, let's create a particle system. Why not? Why not? We'll cover this later. But let's say we want the blue ball to have a particle system, and let's create a prefab. So the particle system is a prefab now itself, right? Which means we can have a lot of them, right? And I mean, they only work when we press play for just for performance reasons. If we go into a blue ball, now we can drag a particle system on it. And you see the particle system is blue because it's a prefab, which means if we change it here, this one changes as well, right? And now all of our blue balls now have a particle system here, right? Well, they are falling because they are and let's say now we don't want them to fall, right? We go to the base prefab and we enable is kinematic, which means Unity waits for us to manipulate them through code. And we just modify the base one, right? And you see the particle systems should be here, but I don't know what's happening. Particle system, where are you? Oh, yeah, I know what happened. So we go back to the blue wall and particle system should have, you see, it's not in the middle. We should go 0, 0, 0, which means this is the local position relative to this ball's position, basically relative to this gizmo here, this thing, right? When you press 0, 0, 0. Actually, we could also do that in play mode directly. So you see, blue balls have some particles inside them. Good. Let's let's keep it like that for now. Okay. Yeah, and you can have variants of variants. And here's a video if you want to go even.
Gioco il meu preferato.
Nope.
Just a reminder, you can run this video at 2x speed. Everything I say is captioned and shown on the screen.
So you can just look at this again, but it's mostly repeating what I say, right? I'm just putting it here. Oh, have 3 concurrent viewers on YouTube. Okay. Good, so you can take a look here, right? I won't play it now.
We might have tons of these
You
blue and
see,
green guys, which are all just modified versions of the
more
original red cube prefab. If
easy
you wanted to give them all a
digest
hat,
here,
that's
probably.
fine. You can just put of it, just like before. Apply to the
Yep.
blue variant.
Yeah, I recommend you go over it after. So
Just a reminder, you can run this.
no. Well, how do I go? Nested prefabs. Yeah, exactly what we've done now when I added a particle system to the blue ball, and the particle system was a prefab. So if I wanted to change the particle system, like I have like 100 balls which are blue, and they of course obviously have the particle system on them, and I want that particle system to emit red sparkles or whatever those things are. I can modify the particle system prefab itself separately. And because all of those particle systems from all of those blue balls don't have any overrides added to them, then they will obviously change as well. Yes, huge time saver. Yes, this is a good example. So you can create a house with many prefabs inside. Well, actually, prefabs instances, or depends, like chairs, sofa, and so on. You can turn the whole house into a prefab, right? And that will maintain all of the links, like all of the sub prefabs, like the sofa, the chairs, the TV, everything, like they will still be linked to their base prefabs. So yeah, while the sub objects are still linked to their base prefabs. Yes, this is root of a prefab variant. When you double click it, it shows here like we've seen this thing here. And this is a nested prefab. And it doesn't doesn't show the plus sign here because I mean I know how to explain it, but I don't know if I should go into this. But basically, you see nested prefab added here. Basically, I took a prefab and I added it. So I don't know. Let's add it. You see? Uh, well, yeah, it doesn't show like this. So this is a base, and you open like a variant. This is a variant, yeah, ball blue. And when you add an object here, you see it with a plus, and this is a prefab, and it has this cube icon is blue. But let's just add a new empty object, like which is not a prefab, and you see this is like an empty thing because this doesn't exist anywhere else except here inside this variant, which is of course a file, and it has a prefab extension. They're all prefabs, just that the variants are just have some properties there, which lets Unity know that it's a variant. Um, but if, for example, I go and I add a new object here, um, like let's say I add the particle system here. If I go here, this particle system that I've added now, let's change it to, there's no plus here because as far as we are concerned, editing this variant, we're seeing it as coming from the parent prefab. So it's like, okay, parent says there's a particle system here. That's fine. We don't know whether the prefab parent has it as like inside it, or if it was added afterwards. Um, yeah, and basically when you see a plus, you only see it for objects that are added at this level of inheritance. Um, yeah. Yeah, imagine like when you have a complex UI and you have a lot of, for example, panels like this, or a lot of buttons, a lot of everything. These are prefabs, right? And when you want to reskin a game, basically you are just modifying the prefabs, right? And they change everywhere in the game. And of course, it's not always as easy as it sounds. You still have to do some manual tweaks afterwards. Unless you just change the color or something, I don't know. And yeah, that's with the UI. So light, what's a light? You guessed it, a game object. You create a light. And we've already done that with a point light. But let's delete it. Yeah, let's create a light, I guess. Or yeah, we'll go over the types. So we have a directional light, and this represents the sun, usually. And like mathematically speaking, its rays are parallel to each other, which mathematically means that the sun is infinitely far away, right? It doesn't have any cone like shape. Yeah, and turns out it's very easy to compute. And also because it's the most used type of light, it's already added by default. Yeah, and this is the directional light. You see, you can. For some reason, these things are not like getting completely dark. I don't know why, but we won't go over that now. But yeah, this is the light. Oh, color. The color is black. That's why. Yeah, I made it darker so I can so the point light will contrast, will be seen. Yeah, this is, and you can literally like simulate a complete day, right? Yes, directional lights, and you just change it from here if you want to turn it into something else, but usually you just keep the directional light there. That's the default one, and just you can just disable it if you don't want it and you want to use like um you can use you want to use like torches, right? You have a torch and you press you put a point light there, right? And the reason you are still seeing things here, you have to go to rendering lightning, and there's some ambient light, right? And because you have a sky by default, you see skybox. There's a material for skybox, and this thing here, which is like a programmatic thing. But there are a lot of skyboxes. There are assets on the asset store, and so on and so forth. And I think you can do like intensity multiplier. Yeah, basically environment lightning source is skybox, and intensity you control it, and basically everything is dark now. You see, if you put it to 0. So there's no ambient light, and only directional light controls everything. And now, like if you do it like this, you see it's like night. Well, there's still something here. I don't know where it comes from, but bear with me. Yeah. Yeah, actually you can make like everything dark. Yeah, yeah. Actually, what you're doing, like you're saying, okay, the sun is downwards, right? And it irradiates from the ground, basically. So basically, there's always a phase that's irradiated. So if you want to fully simulate like the a night and day cycle, you would want like when it goes to night mode, you will also have to do this thing, or no, this thing, like just to turn it completely black, right? You also like change the color of the light to black. Let's try Control Z, do some Control Z's. Yeah, so this is the skybox, and this is back direction light. So let's see, Colin, you're asking for a 2D environment where your direction is locked. Can you have a type of lighting that has no fall off? Let's see. For 2D environment where your direction is locked. Yeah, I don't really understand. You mean there are no shadows? I mean there's no gradient for directional light. The directional light, like if this plane is so x 1000 and z 1000, this light is infinitely big and infinitely far away. Yep. And that's why it's the simplest one, and it's also the simplest one to compute, and consumes the least amount of resources, but it's mostly used because it's the most basic one, and basically the sun is the most basic form of light. Right. And if you have and we will go over it now. Yeah, and there are some, let's see, do I talk about this here? You have some modes, we won't go over them now too much, but like you have real time, which means when you're playing the game, basically you can see the shadow moving. But 1 second, I didn't want to do that. But you can also have it like baked, which means that you have to bake it at let's see if it works the way I think it works. Yeah, okay, it's not like I imagined. It's so lightning is a big sub domain of rendering. So yeah, it's a bit more, I don't really exactly remember how it works. But usually baked means that you can bake the lightning and yeah, the lighting, and it creates a file with your lighting settings and all the shadows and everything. And usually for large scenes, that's how it's done. For, I don't know, an RPG, 3D RPG with lots of houses, mountains, and all of that. And I mean, even for a single room, usually you'd use baked because that gives you the highest quality possible, because it takes like, it might take even like 30 minutes to bake the lighting for a room, and it looks very realistic, right? And then you have it like that, and of course if you move an object, its shadow will stay at the same place, right? Or if you remove, or if you rotate it, its shadow it will rotate with it. So you're doing this only with static objects, and you also will have to press this static here, right? And which means you cannot move them once the game starts. And when you mark something as static, the Unity's renderer, when you press bake, somewhere here, there's, I think, auto generate light is off. Yeah. That's what the baked is for. And you can have intensity multiplier or intensity, you see, lots of intensity. Color, you've already saw it, so we can have it like red, see. And combined with the sky, it gives you this color here. Shadow type, you can have soft shadows, which look better, hard shadows, which look like this, but it's faster. Like you literally will see higher FPS. And especially on mobile, like you can go from 4D to 60 if you want. Like if your game is too heavy and you want to sacrifice this thing, you can do it like that. Or no shadows if you want even more performance. Yeah, and these are some things. Cookie is an interesting thing that I haven't used, but I will talk about this on spot. But basically, imagine this is not for directional light, but for spotlights. For example, a flashlight has this cone shape, right? And sometimes when you play some games, you don't see a perfect round circle of light on the wall. You also see some imperfections in the like maybe the lens of the flashlight are dirty or something, right? And that's what this cookie is for. That's how it's called. You basically add an image that's whatever you want, for example this thing, right? And you'll see that you'll see those details in your light, right? It's an interesting thing. Rendering mode. Yeah, this is a thing for baking, I think, mostly. Because on some platforms you can only have like one light, and the other lights you have to bake and basically simulate them. And this is like a bad approximation of what's important and what not, right? Um, Colin mask. I don't remember what this is. I think it's what does this light affect? Yeah, what this does this light affect? And these are layers, and they have nothing, everything, and then you can do automatically. Yeah, you can put everything, nothing, manually. I want to say you can just, and layers are another thing. We'll talk. I think we don't talk about them, but layers are groups of objects, or they are used for a lot of things. They are used for example, a camera can also have this cooling mask, which means what does the camera see? If you put nothing, then you see the camera sees nothing. If you put everything, it sees everything. Because, for example, you might have a lot of cameras, and you want some cameras to see some objects and some cameras to not see some other objects, right? And it's the same with the directional light. Maybe you want the light to only affect maybe your character or something like that, right? And you create a layer here. Like basically you write something here, player, right? And let's do it actually. Press Control, save, and go here and cooling mask, because we have everything selected, it automatically selected the player as well, right? But we can add this, make this like this is our player, right? And we go to the directional light, and we say that, okay, this light only affects the player, right? And that's pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting. You can do a lot of things. And yeah, layers have multiple multiple functionalities, multiple usages. They also they are also used in physics. I think we'll go over that later. Yeah. But basically, you have like a physics matrix which says, okay, what layer can collide with what layer? Yeah. So maybe you want like the ball to interact with the ground, but you don't want to interact with water, and that's like a simplistic like to add more realism. Like, I mean, maybe not the ball, but let's say like a dumbbell or a very heavy object, right? You add some realism because you want it to go, you want it to dive in and just reach the bottom of the pool or whatever you have that water. And you can say, okay, the ball, the dumbbell should not interact with the water, right? And that's what you're using the 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 layers for as well. And you have it here. Just quickly, I can show you physics, and we have this collision matrix here, layer collision matrix, you see, and you can say like player can collide with another player, uh, player can collide with water. I mean, yeah, water is just a layer. I think it's just by default it's added. You can have your own water if you want, like another layer called like water 2 or whatever. But just, yeah, it's better to reuse existing ones. Let's remove it. And if we remove it, I think it goes to default. Oh, yeah, there's no layer, which we're kind of in a weird state here. Let's go to default. Yeah, and now go to everything, and we are back. Okay, that's the directional light, and basically we also went over the properties of lights in general, because they have almost the same properties. Then we have like the point light. I feel like these are the most fun things to explore, because lightning is kind of a very visual thing. Let's create light. Like basically you can also do this yourself, right? And try. I mean, I encourage you to do all of these things yourself, whether live now or afterwards. Yeah, this is a point light, and this can be like a fire, like a torch, right? And you can create a script that basically does this thing, like it goes like this, you see, and it's like a fire now, right? Basically, you have a script that once every like 0.2 seconds, so once every 200 milliseconds, changes the value for to a random number between, let's say, 0.9 and 1.1, and you do it like this, right? Then you have like a fire, right? Or a torch or whatever. Or you're in a club, right? And you basically have this thing or whatever, right? You can do anything. Or even like change the color, right? Yeah. Um, about scripting, we'll talk about later next week. Yeah, so this is the point light, and yeah, it can be anything that resembles a point light. And of course, you can make it smaller, bigger. See, you can make it smaller and increase the intensity if you want it to be like very intense. Yeah, and it illuminates every object that falls within its sphere, right? You can make it really big if you want. And I don't know, for some reason it says no shadows, but I wanted to create shadows. Wait, there are no shadows. Oh yeah, there are shadows. Yeah. Yeah, and flare. There's also a cookie here as well. You know what? Let's try it. Oh yeah, you need like a cube map. Yeah, I mean, if you have the texture, you can Google it how to create a cube map. For this, we won't go over it. But once you have the texture, it's easy. You just create an intermediary asset and add it here for yeah, the cookie. Um, let's see. Okay, and we have the spotlight, and let's you create it the same way, but you can also do it like this. Spotlight, and see, this is a spotlight, and it looks in that direction. And let's rotate it so it, see it. Bam. I don't know, should we like, if we put it closer, I think it's more intense. Let's bump up the intensity. You see, it's very intense. Let's put it like this, and we can do the spot angle. And there's some fall off also, like you can create it like this. This is the range. Yeah, and this is your spotlight. You see, you have like a club, and I mean you can do it like this also, this big. Right? Or I don't know, you go here to global, so that you want, like, if you want like to move it not like this, but you want to move it globally on the global axis, right? If you want like this, right? Yeah, and it has the same properties. It has no shadows, so we add shadows. Yeah, see, it creates shadows. Good. This is spotlight. And there's also an area light, and this describes best like a LED panel or a fake window, right? So you have like, and this only works in a baked mode, so you have to bake it, but we won't go over that now. It's basically a button here when you bake it, and the lightning information will be stored in the scene. Like it won't change at runtime when you play the game. But it's good to have this thing here, so basically you can see how it works. So if you're like creating a 3D rendering of a house for your maybe you're not making a game, but a lot of people can use Unity for rendering houses and stuff, right? And you basically have an area light where maybe outside the house is completely dark, and you are creating an area light, um, and put it like right in front of the window or outside of the window, right? Or it being the window, and you see it has like the same property. It has the same property as the point light, but in the sense that the point light, the light source doesn't start from a point, but from a plane, not a plane, but a square, right? So the point of the highest intensity is everywhere on this square, whereas for a spotlight or a point light, uh, the intensity is only in the middle, right? In a single point. Good. Camera. So we need some eyes. And in games, usually, like mathematically, we have one eye in games. And in VR, there are really like two cameras. Really, there are two cameras in VR. There's a plugin to like that manages that for you automatically, and like when you configure your distance between eyes and everything and how it should look, it automatically moves the cameras for you. But most of the time we have one eye mathematically, but that doesn't matter that much. Like, yeah, it's added by default. Cinemachine is a like a camera on steroids, and you have a lot of functionality there that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? It turns you into a film director with a few clicks. Yeah, film like cuts, split screen games, mirrors. For example, the mirrors in your car, if you're doing like a realistic, uh, racing game, you want your mirrors to show you the backside, like you understand, right? And what that the way you do that, you'd have like a camera at the back of your car, right? Let's say this is the back of your car. Let's press Control or Command. It's here. I think it's this. Yeah, basically the camera looks backwards, or I mean, let's say like that's the back of our. And there is render texture. Render texture is the target of where this image, basically whatever the camera records, the target where it should display this thing. And if there's no render texture here, it displays it onto the main screen, like here, right? And no, there are two cameras. I don't know why it shows like that, because this is untagged and this is a main camera. In theory, like the main camera should be the boss, so to speak. Like, let's do it like untagged and main camera again. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, well, you have to disable it. Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why. Maybe, I mean, in theory, when you tag, so yeah, I have to talk about tags as well now. So tags are very similar to layers. So you can have only 32 layers because some maths there, and mostly it has to do with physics, like with the physics engine, because it's faster to just use layers. And it kind of stuck like that. And you have tags here, and you can have any number of tags, right? You can have tag test, and an object can have only one tag, right? And these things are by default like respawn, finish, editor only, game controller, whatever, right? And main camera is a thing that I mean, the theory is, from what I remember, whatever is tagged as the main camera, you can access from your code by writing main camera dot camera, I think it is, or something like that. Like you can access it very easily. And yeah, I think it doesn't have anything to do with which camera displays on the screen. I think you should handle that yourself. Like you should make sure there's only one camera enabled at the same time if it doesn't have render texture available, right? Because it kind of makes sense, because if you have two cameras that doesn't have a render texture as a target, they will both want to, they will compete for the screen space, and like the last one that you create, I think, will just win, right? And like if I enable this one, you'll select the back. But let's create like a render texture really fast. Let's see. And the render texture is an asset, but usually you create it at runtime. Where are you? Here, render texture, 2D size, and yeah, like for a mirror, like you would even want to make it maybe even smaller, 64 by 64, because the bigger you make it, like the larger it is, the more resources it consumes, right? And there are a lot of formats and all of these things. We won't go over them. Okay. Rear mirror camera. Now we have the render texture, and immediately, like the camera that was active before said, oh, nobody's writing to the screen, then I will write there. So this is the rear camera, and you see when I select it, this is what it sees. And yeah, basically this is your rear camera. And the way it will work, if we want, like, let's create a plane, and I think you have to create a material, because you cannot apply a texture to an object. You apply a material, and the material references the texture. We'll go over materials in a while. Material, opaque, and as the only thing you have to remember here is that albedo represents the texture, the main texture. The diffuse texture was called before. You can add it here. And if you can see, like if I do like lock this asset will change in real time when I move the camera. Yeah, I mean, it changes here, not in real time, because just to conserve resources in editor, but in game it will change in real time. So we have our new material, which we can add on the plane, and let's unlock this. So we select our rear mirror, and we add this material. Actually, this is the rear mirror cam material. And you see it's there, and rear camera, we move it, you see, and that's how you can create a Portal game. That's how Portal games is made. And of course, there are a lot of things that you have to calculate so that basically there's a camera. Uh, well, we won't go over it, but you see, I really like this thing. Like, I've never actually created a game with this functionality, but it's really cool. See, and it's like a mirror. And of course, you can uh, you can really create a mirror, right? You can just go here and parent the camera to the mirror and add it like 0, 0, 0, right? And rotation also, I think if you do it 0, 0, 0, let's see, where's the Z? The Z is there. Like the Z is what the camera sees. Let's go like this, 90 degrees. And now it's really a mirror. So because the camera is parented to the mirror, by the way, I never did this in my life, but I really like it. And now basically you have like a real mirror, you see? And of course there are some things. I mean, does it work? Like if I move, do the objects from the mirror also move? No, it's like the first step in creating a mirror, right? It's like you have to calculate like um, where is the player, right? And like the camera has to look like this into the player, and when you go like this, the camera looks like this, and you should do that for every mirror. And there's some scripting to be done there. But yeah, it's a really cool concept. So you can use cameras for a lot of things like that. And yeah, you can have perspective mode and the orthographic mode, and we've already talked about that. But let's do that again. I mean, we talked about the scene view camera in the editor, but not the game camera. But it's the same thing. Like we have let's disable this. We have the main camera, right? And let's disable this thing. And we have just the perspective view, which you were born with, but you can do also orthographic view. And what this does is basically there's no depth in your not the, it's like no matter how far away an object is, it will look the same. It will look the same of the same size, right? And one way of thinking about it, this is what's called the camera frustum. And let's start with perspective. Uh, you see how perspective is exactly as our eye, mostly, because we are seeing like a cone, a vision cone, right? It starts from our eye and we see a cone, but with orthographic, it's like our eye is sorry, our eye is like a big square, and we can see a lot of things around our head and onwards, right? But it's also perfectly, it's like a perfect elongated cube, right? And I think it's infinite or size far. Yeah, you can have like a far plane of, if we make it like 10, the camera can only see objects that are inside its frustum. You see, it doesn't see these things. If you can do like this, it starts to see them. See? Here, it starts to see them. And the further away this far clipping plane is, the more resources you consume, right? That's why you see like in games, I don't know, in Far Cry, Witcher, and all of that, um, you're seeing stuff appearing only when you go closer to them, because otherwise your PC would blow up. Good. Let's go back. Orthographic mode. Imagine flat eyes instead of spheric. Okay, and we'll go into materials and textures. And yeah, we'll go a bit longer than before, but bear with me. Applying materials, shaders, and textures in built-in rendering pipeline, which I said we'll do and we'll use throughout this course. And let's create the cube, and we already have a cube. We've already created the material. Okay, name it something like red. I mean, we've already done that. We can just select it, right? The red ball, and we have a standard shader by default. We can change its color under this albedo property. You can drag it on the object directly if you want. Yeah. Let's create it actually cube. Where are you, cube? Here. Let's I mean, we can drag this. Yeah, no, just keep it simple. Yeah, you can drag it here. You see, I mean, you can do it like this. You can preview it, right? Bam. And this works because this cube has a mesh a renderer component. Because you can also have like other whatever renderer. You can have like a line renderer, sprite, trail, whatever. And because it has a renderer, like Unity knows, okay, if you drag a material on it, I'll automatically assign it to this component because it's kind of obvious. There's no other thing that I would want except that. And let's import the texture. Open in a new window, in a new tab. Well, yeah, it doesn't work like that. So I think this thing, right? Brick texture. Well, we can just, you know, can we do this? Yeah. This is just for educational purposes, right? We drag it here. We drag it here. Okay. Interesting that the second time worked. Here. We just drag it again here, right? And on this, let's copy because we don't want to. We don't want to modify every other object. We only want to modify this cube. So we'll have the texture. Is this the texture? No? What kind of texture this is? Oh, this is something. Let's, yeah, let's do some just for demonstration purposes. Yeah, that's a weird image format. This thing, yeah. Bricks, yeah, bricks. And yeah, you can have things like this. We won't go too much into it. But basically, if you want to do it, if you want to put this on the user interface in an image component, you'll have to press sprite. But by default, it's all right for just 3D objects and everything. Cube. Cube and bricks. So in the material, in the albedo, we add this, bam, and we have some bricks. And let's keep it original. And we have a cube that's textured. Yeah, actually we have to press escape and then again slideshow. And if I do this, yeah, good. Yep. Now create a new material named bricks. Select it, drag the texture. Yeah, exactly with what we did. Yeah, let's actually create a normal map as well. And there's a lot of tools which can help you do that, paid and non-paid and everything. This one is a small tool that's free that somebody created. And basically you put your texture there, and you also have a normal map. And what a normal map is, basically you have a lot of maps, texture maps. And this is the most basic texture map possible, which is the albedo map. And this has the color information, right? But you also want to have like shadow information. And you also maybe want to have shininess information, which is called specular map. That's how it's called, the shininess. So that maybe you want your material to be like glass, where it's very shiny, or like a floor which is less shiny but still like a wooden floor, right? There's also like displacement maps, which literally instructs the Unity's renderer to make physical bumps in your object. So you have a cube that's not like it's mesh, it's 3D model, it's not displaced, but through a displacement map, you basically can create any. It's used for a floor and for terrain, for example, for I don't know, in the woods or on the mountains. When you walk through them, you see like a lot of rocks, small rocks, popping out of the like the terrain. But when you step on them, like you don't like, your camera doesn't go up or down, right? You don't really interact with it. It's just visual, and it's very fast. It's very performant, right? It doesn't consume too much of your GPU power that way, because they don't have a physical component, like your physics doesn't interact with it, right? Um, but we'll be using a normal map, right? This is a normal map, and it I mean, if you want to go like very I mean, how big companies do it, big studios, they are usually done by hand by someone, right? But you can get a very good approximation here as well. And we have a normal map. And let's see if we can, I mean, I'm putting it here and also here. And let's see, where is it? Bricks. And there's a convention, like everyone can use it, but um yeah, like we won't go into conventions, but usually whether like lowercase or uppercase, everything, but just make sure that every asset is of like same case. Here it's not, for example. It's just good for the eyes. I mean, it looks good, and it's for organization. Good. Bricks. Let's select the bricks. Where are you? Cube. And you see, when you name it the same, they kind of, because they're in alphabetical order, and they are uh, near each other. And we have normal map. Let's get bricks normal and put it on the normal map. And just look at the cube. Well, it's not. Oh, okay, it's not seen as a normal map. You have to, in texture type, you have to select normal map and press apply. And I think they let's see, does it work the way I expected? Oh, we need the light. We need a light. Yes, this is the light. And let's see the normal map. So what the normal map does, it defines the places where there will be more shadow than in others. Like instead of the whole face of the cube to be illuminated the same, you'll have like this lines here will be less illuminated than others, right? But we have to look at it. Or you see how it looks here? Yeah, I have to create a sphere. It will be more obvious that way. Bricks. You see how it looks like it looks a bit more real now, right? This is what a normal map does actually. And when I rotate it, you'll see now. You see how it looks more real because there are bumps here which interact with light, and that's your normal map. And if I remove the normal map, basically you remove it by pressing here, and like you have to go up and you have this none. You see the difference? And of course, like you can have, I think this is the, what's this? Oh yeah, this is like the intensity, right? You can have 0.3, 0.8, yeah, the intensity multiplier. So that's a normal map, which is cool. Let's go back. Yep. This is how it looked before, and with the normal map, it's like this. Now let's create a specular map, like I said, which allows us to control the shininess of a surface. And it's the same. We have like a specular somewhere here, specular, and we download it, specular map. Bricks, specular. And we select again the material and we add it to, where are you here? Yeah, I think we have to do like standard with specular setup or something. Yeah. So basically we change the shader of this material. And a shader is basically code for your GPU. That's what it means. So a shader is a special kind of program for your GPU, which is based on parallelizing a lot of operations at once. And for our purposes, it defines how a material works. So a material is in a way an instance of a shader. So the shader is the program, and the material is like an instance of that shader. So it's like a build of that shader in a way, like a manifestation of that shader with some properties attached, right? So you can have a lot of materials that are very different, but just the same shader. And the specular setup is separate because it consumes a bit more resources, probably. Okay, bricks specular. Let's add specular now. You see how shiny it is. So it's like a glass, right? And you control the smoothness here, right? Like I think this is no smoothness at all, and then you create it like this. And if you rotate it, you see how you can see its smoothness, shininess. Actually, I wanted to say. You can make it like as shiny as you want to see. This is like very shiny, right? And you see it reflects the sky as well. And like there are ways to make it like reflect even objects. But because it takes a lot of computational power, I think it doesn't reflect objects by default. Yeah, you cannot see really this cube here, but there are ways. There's a thing that's called blend probes, basically an object reflection probe. And you add this thing here, and basically yeah, it's more there's more things to set up here. I don't want to go too much into it, but real time. Yeah, if it's real time, basically you put a reflection probe here, and what this does, it encodes all of the objects in this area. And the reason why we have to do it this way is because reflection takes a lot of computing resources, and we have to put them by hand. And of course, there are a lot of plugins which do this for you. But now you see that you see the reflection of this cube on this thing, right? And that's cool. Like if I move this, I think you'll see it in the cube, or not. Not? No, you're not seeing. I think you have to start the game or something like that. Refresh mode. Every frame. Okay, let's see now. Maybe we have to start the game, because I really want to find this out. And of course it might help you, maybe. Oh yeah, you see? You can see the cube moving. And this you can see it moving as well, I think. Yeah. Yeah, which is cool. Okay, let's go back. So we have a specular map as well now. Good. Which we've done already. And now you'll see a specular map, like you see now on the wall. And for example, if it rains, you can have a script that automatically increases the specular component of your wall, for example, right? Then if the rain starts to, or you can even have like a function of how much rain there is that automatically updates the specular component of your walls. And you only constrain the amount, you will only control the amount of rain there. You have like maybe from 0 to 1, where 1 is maximum. And the walls will automatically update. And then you just have, based on whatever triggers, you set the rain at 0.1, 0.2, 0.8, 1 when it's maximum. And then when you want to just, end the rain, you'll end it slowly, you'll end it, and the walls will also respond automatically. It's nice what you can do with code. Yeah, wet, dry, sandy, whatever. Yeah, let's try a transparent material, which is really easy. Bricks illusion. Let's bricks. And I think click on material type. Yeah, and this is not like the best way to do it, but it really depends on whether you're using this on mobile or on desktop, because there are different shaders, and they are different for performance reasons. For example, on mobile, shaders tend to respond to fewer lights. Think of it this way: like you have a sun, and maybe you have like 10 torches and 2, I don't know, guns or whatever that can shoot, and then you basically have to instantiate a light at that point, and then quickly delete the light, through code, if you want like to have a realistic effect for shooting. And for each light, your GPU has to work really hard, right? And it's like multiplying. Like you have 3 lights, it has to do like 3 times the work mostly, because it has to calculate every possible ray, bounce it off walls and all of that, right? It's a lot of computations. And that's why you have multiple shaders. Some of them respond to only one light, some of them to multiple lights, and so on. Let's do legacy shaders, transparent, bumped, specular. And it's bumped specular because bumped means this normal map. So the normal map basically defines the bumps in the texture, right? And it's also called literally like that, bump map. And originally, I think it was called, or yeah, it doesn't matter. Just normal map and bump map are interchangeable. Let's do bricks illusion and legacy shaders, transparent, bumped specular. And this is it. And shininess, there's also here, I think. Yeah, it's a bit different, of course. It's a different shaders, like 2 different people wrote them, right? But what you can do, I think you can do it like this, right? So it's like an illusion, or whatever you want to use it for. Let's do the sphere as well. Well, doesn't matter. Illusion sphere. Let's make it more pronounced. Oh, that's the shininess. Yeah, so this is like a transparent object. Yeah, it's here. And yeah, I mean, you can go like, let's see, this is, let's go back a bit. Specular. Oh yeah, you cannot change it here. But here, for example, you can change it. You can change the illusion. Let's put it like slightly. You can change like the color of the specular component. So that means specular color to be like white. Yeah, so now it's, but you can also do it like this. You want maybe like this. So what that means is like the specular component is red. So basically the parts that are shiny have the red color, right? And you can make like less shiny or more shiny. And it has this interesting effect. You see like here, where it's the most shiny, it's like a bit red, right? So it's not red itself, but the parts that shine are red. It's interesting. And that while the light is white, right? Because like you can create lots of effects, because there are some materials like that where you throw a white light on them and then shine like blue, but neither the light nor the material is blue, right? Like it's just physics. I don't know how it works, but um yeah. Yeah, basically this. Yes, they are a big subject, so we won't be focusing much on it. Yeah, like I mean, when I created these slides, like I wanted this course to be more on the programmatic side of things, and which still is, but we also will go into animation and all of those things. I think next week, I think. And yeah, just play with the materials. Just play with them. There are a lot of things to discover. I haven't write it here. And see you later. This was it. It was not too much compared to yesterday, but yeah, this was it. If you have any questions, just write them there on Discord. If not, I guess I'll see you next time. Let's wait a bit for questions if there are any questions. You're welcome, man. Waiting for you tomorrow and next week. It's the same. It's the same. It's 18:30 Eastern European time, and that will be the same for the whole 4 weeks. Subjects for tomorrow, I have to look into them. Um, I'll have to look into them. Let's see. Yeah, we'll talk about scenes, more about scenes, scene management, animation. Yeah, we'll do some animation tomorrow. We'll do some animation, some basic animation. And we'll also do that the next week, more in depth. Yeah, scene management and sprites animation, 2D animations. And the logic for 2D animations also apply to just 3D animations because it's the same logic and you just tweak properties of 3D objects. Yeah. See you tomorrow, guys. Have a nice evening.